Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today and using your lunch break for this little workshop. I'm gonna share my screen and hopefully it works. Yes, perfect. So my name is Ada Walczykowska. I'm originally Polish and I live in Berlin since 11 years now. I was relocated to Berlin with my work over 10 years ago. And today I want to show you the basics of working with project management tool, Monday.com, and how to use it for your projects if you are joining it from the, if your client is using Monday.com and you are hired to lead a big international campaign for them. Who am I? First of all, I worked for TV owner production for many, many years. Before that, I was working for TV commercials production, and I was very happy to move to this post-production part in TV because production was simply too stressful for me. And I have been covering different project management roles, working for different channels in Viacom. And my last years in Viacom, I was promoted to creative operations manager role, and I was supporting creative teams in the whole EMEA cluster. After a few years, I decided to leave the company and I became self-employed in 2022. And ever since, I work as an external consultant usually with creative corporations. I also do creative project management and different kind of workshops and onboarding processes for my clients. And one of my favorite things that I do is trainings for Monday.com, the system that I have been using for over 6 years right now. I have also helped several corporations to implement the system to their structure, working with all their departments and like seeing what kind of needs they might have for using it. I believe I know it pretty well, and I hope to share this knowledge with you today. Moving further. So today we're going to cover the basics. If any of you participated in the previous workshop that was for creative freelancers, we will repeat like just 7 minutes of the previous workshop. So the basic nomenclature used in the system, just so you don't get lost when I explain some more complicated details later, because today we are digging deeper into the system than we did in the previous workshop. Project managers are the owners of boards on Monday.com when they lead the project. So they have to know not only how to react to what's going on there, but actually how to create it, how to create different automations, how to maybe create views for other users and for themselves. So I will try to show you as much as possible from this. After this, we will move into an example setting of a project environment. And we're going to highlight the most important features that are used in the system. My advice is on how to set up a make list or like production list for an international project, and then different views and filters. And as the third very important point, we will go through basic automations and how to set them up. And after this, if you have any questions, then I will hopefully be able to answer them. Before I start, actually, we have now 6 people in the team. If you already have some questions that you would like to be answered, if you can kindly like type them in the chat, so maybe like mid of the workshop, I can try to see if I will add it to the workshop or not, or I will answer it at the end. But think about it if you already have some projects going on. Okay, so we are starting with the basic stuff on Monday.com. This is the starting page, and I'm gonna change in a second to the real life system so you can see how everything is moving here. But if you want to take a screenshot of this view, feel free to do it. When you enter the system on the starting page, you will see shortcuts to different sections. In the middle, you will see recently visited boards. Underneath, there is a shortcut to inbox, or currently it's called update feed. Shortcuts to update feed is also in the icon on the upper right corner menu, and it's exactly the same feature, of course. Profile settings are on the upper right corner when you click on your picture or your avatar. And on the left side menu, you see all the boards that you have access to. And basically, this is it. So whatever we will be entering today, everything is on the left side menu. These are the boards. There is nothing else, so you don't have to worry that if you see something that looks different, that doesn't look like a normal table, it is in a different section of the system. There is no different section. So all the boards are in this menu. If you don't see something and your colleague can see it, it means you simply are not assigned to certain boards, and they have to share access with you. They have to invite you to it. Now, what is the update feed or inbox that we see in the middle section? This is the communication center in Monday.com, but it's not a standalone communicator. And I'm gonna switch to the real system. So when you are accessing the inbox feed, messages that you see here are always attached to something. And you can see that this message, for example, was sent by Diane Troy, and it was sent on the board that was called Testova, under Star Trek, under Element 3. If I click on it, it takes me to this asset. And we're going to walk through it in a second. But I just want to show you that all the messages in my inbox or in my update feed are attached to something. They are never standalone, and there is no physical possibility to send a DM on Monday.com. Messages are always visible for other people on the board. It is a very transparent system, so always remember about it if you are writing something and you don't necessarily want to share it with everyone else. For this purpose, use Slack or Teams or something else. Moving to basic nomenclature. So I have already been using some of these names, but just so that it stays in your head, documents on Monday.com are called boards. On the board, you will have different types of columns. It's a basic table view, as you can see here, but there are columns that have different functions, and they are much more automated than what we have on Excel. A board is built of groups, and one group of assets is this kind of colorful section that I'm going to move here to show you, that you can see here, for example. So the live action shows is a group. The old movies is a group. So every single board is built of groups, and every group is built of items, and items can be divided into sub-items. And this is, for now, the most important part about the naming convention. Then we are moving to communication. So what I already mentioned, we have our inbox, and every single item and sub-item, they have this little communication bubble in the first column. And this is where you can leave messages for other users. And this is the only place where you can leave them. So there is, again, no other communicator. And this means that if you build your make list in a way that your assets and your deliverables are listed in items or sub-items, you can have a separate briefing for each of them. And even if you keep one briefing for the whole project, you can use this communication bubble or update feed for approval processes. And this is how my clients usually use it. So this keeps it very neat and clear, because whenever, even after some time, you want to check out what has been happening with each, let's say, trailer or ident, you can always see the approval process of exactly this asset, so it's not mixed up with anything else from the campaign. And if you are writing messages using items or sub-items update feed, if you want someone to see them, you have to tag them using the @ sign, and you can only write them to people who are also subscribed to this board. So external users who are not on your account will not be able to see these messages or get notifications about them. And the very last thing about our setting, if you are an external project manager and you're working with client's account, you will not have the visibility on this. But if you are hired to manage a really big long-term project that lasts, for example, for 6 months, and you have to also add and manage external vendors, you might request a membership account for this period, because you will have to probably add and remove external people from the board, and you can only do it as a member of the board. So if you are not able to do it, this means you are a guest. You're on a guest account, which is a free account for your client, and you might just want to ask them if it's possible for the time of the project to get a membership account. And when you are creating a completely new board, and we're going to walk through it in a second, there are 3 types of board accessibility. So there is one that is called main, the second one is private, and the third one is shareable. And just for the sake of our workshop, but also for your future work, always go for the shareable one. This is the only type of board that you can share with whoever you want, both internal members and external guests. But unless you share it, it's not visible for other people. So it's basically private before you invite other people. It's the most secure and logical kind of setup for every project. Do you guys have any questions on this point? Okay, I assume that no. So we're moving to our project environment. First, I'm gonna walk you through one more thing that you have to understand from the setup of the system, the most important features of Monday.com. And these are 3 types of columns from over like 30 types that Monday.com offers, and the update feed. Update feed we already covered a little bit, and you're going to see a little bit more of this later. But now these most important types of column: status type of column, people type of column, and date. Why are these the most important ones? When you are working with a big make list that has hundreds of assets, you want to be sure that everything you see is 100% correct and 100% clear for everyone who is working on it, which means that you have to rely on repetitive data and not some kind of custom solutions. And this is exactly what you get with status, people, and date. Status is this column that has these colorful boxes. You can customize them, you can create many more of them. But if you use it for actual status, so for steps in the project, it makes sense to keep as little of them as possible, usually up to 6 or 8 maybe, and not more. And this means that if you want to have a control of every single tiny step in your process, it would be wiser to create few status columns for different types. For example, the main status column for overall project status, the second status column for sound mixing, the third one for finalizing graphics, for example, or anything else, so that you don't have these like half steps in every single asset production, because the more you put there, the more likely it is people will not use them. And if they don't use them on this point, you will end up in a project that is extremely messy, because part of the stuff is updated, part of it is not updated. So the simpler you keep it, the better for a big project. And the repetitive data that is happening here means that everything that you see here is 100% accurate. And for example, we see that our live action shows group has 2 items that are done, 2 are in processing, 1 is only planned, and 1 is stuck. And when I look at it, I have 100% certainty that nothing here is like in between steps. And if this was not a status column, but a text column, imagine what kind of nomenclature people would use to allocate the same status. So for example, done could be finished, ingested, delivered, ended, I don't know, end status or success or something else. Everyone who would be changing the status to this final one could use a different word for this. And then when you're looking at this make list and it has thousands of assets, you're never able to say, is this project really done or not? Because everyone is using their own way to express this level of completion. So you as a project manager sort of have to impose that this is what we are using. And if you click on done, this means everything has been delivered, finished, mixed, and etc. And the status column, because it has these like very clear steps, is also used by filters, and we're going to walk through it today, and by automations. And this is the most important part on Monday.com. The same with people type of column. As you can see here on this particular board, we have 3 people type columns, and they are named with different roles that we have in the project. We have here additional info, so someone who will be providing some additional information, approver, and lead. And you can assign more than one person. You can assign, I don't know if there is even a limit, maybe 500 users to one item. The moment you assign someone, and before you assign them, you will see this little like human icon. The moment you assign someone, they receive a notification about it. So you don't even have to inform them, but of course, I mean, you have to communicate with people who you're assigning to the project. But people type of column is a very similar thing to status. It gives you this 100% certainty on who is assigned there, and you can filter for this later. So if you want to see everything that is currently done by Jean-Luc Picard, you just filter for it. And then you see all the items where he is assigned, even on top of other people. So this allows you to have 100% certainty that you find relevant stuff. And finally, the dates column. Here we are using not a date, but a timeline, but we can also create a date column, no problem. And date column is connected to a calendar. You can also change its, I'm not able to move it. You can also change the settings there so that it will show you the name of the week or even an hour, but we're not going to get into this right now. We're going to just put in random dates. You can, of course, rename the column, and let's call it a deadline, for example. These 3 columns, person, date, and status, are used for most of the automations on Monday.com. And they allow you to have either a personalized automation that is always going for a certain person. Let's say project manager is always the same one person in your team. Then you can have the automation set up for this particular person, or for a role. So you can have an automation saying, when a status changes to something, inform whoever is assigned under the approver. So if we change the status to, for example, processing, approver people will receive a notification here. And on top of this, again, you can use all these things for filtering. So you can see everything with this week's deadlines and assigned to certain user and with certain status. So these are our core columns that you will be using the most, I hope. Going back to our presentation, now we're going to start with this little bit of like basic knowledge. We're going to start in how to plan our international project. Because of course, when you are receiving your first media plan from the client, and you have just like the draft of information on what is going on in your campaign, you might not know exactly how do I even start planning it. And this depends on a few things, and this is, of course, the basics of project management. So how many platforms does this campaign cover? How long does it go on? Is it like a 3-month project or maybe 1-week project? What type of assets do you have there? Do you only cover video assets or only graphics or both, or maybe on top of this print, radio or something like that? And finally, how big is the team that will be working on it from the client side and external side? You are, as a project manager, probably one person. There might be, let's say, 10 more external vendors, graphic designers, video editors, maybe some agencies. And then inside the company, you might have 30 more people from marketing, people from social media, or organic social, paid digital, I don't know, anything else basically. So you suddenly have a situation that you have to think about, how do I build this document in a way that is clear for everyone and it's easy to use for people who maybe are joining this project for this client only once, and they have to immediately be able to read it. So you have to make some decisions. And long story short, if the project is relatively small, maybe it's complicated, but it's maybe up to, I don't know, 100 assets, then you might want to keep everything on the item level. So everything that you see here on this upper part, that is, wait, because you don't see what I'm showing, but I'm showing this. So if you want to keep it extremely simple to look at for everyone who's joining, you don't create any sub-items. And then you maybe just divide the project by groups depending on the platform. So you might have one group for cinema and TV, one group for digital out of home, one for out of home, one for paid digital. But if your project is very big and you will have 8 markets, 1,500 assets, then you have to think a little bit further, because then this makelist will be very hard to read. And then it makes sense to start grouping stuff, either again by platform or maybe markets, or by the team working on it. And here we have an example of grouping by type of campaign. So we have live action shows campaign, old movies campaign, and all of this is in one group, but then it's grouped into the items of different types of assets. So we have trailers, out of home, digital out of home, social media, paid digital, and within each of these items we have the actual assets. And this is my most important pro tip for all the project managers. Whoever you are working with, and even if your client doesn't really work like this on a daily basis, make sure that when you have the make list, every final delivery asset is a separate item or sub-item, and it's not grouped together by formats or languages. So for example, here, when we have in out of home billboard 1 Warsaw, don't, even if it's an identical asset to something else in Budapest and you only have to change the language, do not put it together, because it will be impossible to track these things. If something goes wrong in one of these assets, you have to change the status for everything, and suddenly, if it's only one element, you will remember what went wrong. But if you have to change and correct 100 assets and you delivered 400, it will be very hard for you to track what is already correctly delivered and what is not. This is one reason to do it like that. And the second reason is that, especially as an external project manager, you might want to later give your client some kind of reporting of the campaign and how many assets were delivered. If you group them together and in one sub-item or item, you have sometimes 19 assets, sometimes 20, sometimes 3, you are simply not able to use Monday.com for reporting, because it will not read your mind of how many assets were in every sub-item. If you keep everything separate, so one file is one sub-item, you can use Monday.com for exporting charts and numbers with just 1 or 2 clicks, and I'm going to show you this today. And this is one of the coolest features of Monday.com, especially for us freelancers, so we can really show in a very professional manner how our project looks like, and the client is super happy because they probably don't even use this feature themselves. Wait, let me find my window. Okay, and one more thing about our setting up the project. So a part of just layers, so how do you build it as items and sub-items, you have to think about roles in the project. So we already said that we might have a lot of people, but it doesn't mean we will have 30 columns of people, because this would be very hard to work with. So you have to think, like, what are the roles of these people? Even if they come from different departments, their only role in your project might be that they are requesters. So you create one column called requester, or however the client wants it, and there you assign relevant people from relevant departments who are eventually going to answer questions about the briefings and about the asset delivery, for example. Then you can create another column for vendors, producers, editors, whoever is physically doing your files. One for a project manager for yourself, so you can keep yourself assigned in order to receive different notifications about updates of your asset. Maybe there is another role in your project, like a quality check person or anything else. If it's like 5 or 6 different columns, this means there are like this many roles in the project. And then as many as possible people can be assigned there to all these roles, or just some of them. And this is what you have to plan in the beginning, just to make it very clear for everyone who is starting on this project, like, where are they in there? How do you read this make list? And finally, what I already started talking about a little bit earlier, we have the status column. And with status column, you have to make sure that you are very clear in what kind of statuses you're using. So using our basic make list here, we have here only 5 steps in the process, and you can always add more. But again, the more of these little steps you add, the more you risk people will be not using them, and you will have a mess on your make list. You are ultimately, as a project manager, an owner of this project, and you have to make sure that people are doing their job, changing statuses when they are supposed to, etc. But you can't always control a huge 5,000 asset make list for every single element. So the simpler you keep it, the better other people will be working with it. And you can, of course, customize these, so you can call them differently. Like planned can be also, I don't know, pending, or something like that. And you can also customize colors here. Usually for most of our work culture countries, green is assigned for everything that is done or delivered. But if you feel like you want to use another color for this, this is, of course, your decision. And all this column setting will go across the whole board. So if you change statuses in this group, they are changed everywhere in the board. You can't customize them per group. And it would also, of course, make your work very hard later. Do you guys have any questions on this point?
Ada, I believe we had one question in chat. I'm not sure if Sonia can unmute herself to speak, but in case she doesn't, maybe have a look if you can.
Oh yes, I see your question, Sonia. Thank you very much. And when to use it and how to. So I'm maybe going to read it very fast. I need to know how do you collab with new clients that they might not use it, and how not to overwhelm them with notifications, but giving them access to see the progress and also make them participant. Absolutely. I'm going to cover this as well. Thank you. That's a very good question. Let me just move to the next point, and I think we will cover it in this section still. Okay, so moving to the final setting up of our environment. What we saw till now, we are seeing this table view. And this is the basic of every board on Monday.com. Every time you create a new board, it will be a table. And it will be a simple table. Of course, it will not have all these details that I put here for our example project, but it will always have the first column that has this communication bubble. And after this, you can add whichever columns you want. And if you want to use this data to create charts or timelines, you don't have to do it manually, because Monday.com gives you the opportunity to read from this data. And that's why it's so important to use repetitive data and not text columns. And here is an example. This chart, both these charts, are reading data from our board. And creating them is only one click. I'm moving to the system to show you how I did it exactly. So we have our make list Q3 board, and I want to create a chart from scratch. On the upper side menu, where you see different views, and these views are visible for all the users on the board. These are not private. The main table view is the one that is the general one, and you can see everything. If you want to create, let's say, a chart, you go to this little plus, click on the chart. Monday.com will suggest what data it's reading from it already, but of course we can customize it. We might not want to read from the status itself, but we might want to read from something else. And we might also want to change the shape of our chart. So we are going to these three dots here into settings, and we're going to go for a pie chart. And now we can see that from the whole board that we have there, 37% of the assets are done, 25% is processing, etc. You can export this chart into a PNG or PDF, and you can share it with your client, for example, on a daily basis, just to show them the progress of your project. You can, of course, go more in details and have many more information on this chart. And you can also read from the sub-item statuses or item statuses only. You can count items or give the average number. You can change colors here. You can change how the values are presented. And you can also change which groups we are reading from. So we might, for example, want to skip animation shows or series as well. And then suddenly our chart is life-changing and we are only seeing updates from live action shows and old movies groups, or only from one of them. And you can also, in this view where we are here, we can add more widgets. So let's say we want to have more charts. So we can have next to each other charts reading from different groups. For example, this is something that you can play with for hours, because it gives you this opportunity to not work on these assets separately. And a part of the chart, a really cool widget is called numbers. It's called numbers, and it can it can count all the assets that are on your make list. Here I'm counting both items and sub-items. So if I want to see that this make list that we see here, I could of course count it manually, but you don't necessarily want to do it. If you have this information and you, for example, know that your client has a limit that we can only create 300 assets for a campaign, and suddenly you see that people from their departments are requesting more, this is where you can immediately say stop, we have already overcome our limit. We have 370 assets now. And these charts and these widgets are live. They are reading from our make list constantly. So if something changes tomorrow, it will of course be updated. So this is view number one, probably my favorite one. But apart of this, you have many, many other views, and you can explore them yourself, because it would take us an hour probably to go through it. But there is one more I want to show you today, which is a timeline. Timeline view is, of course, reading from the calendar. You might want to work on it a little bit. So what you see here is what Monday.com automatically decided to show us. And this is how our campaign is planned. So you can see basically these different groups here and different assets that we have in the sub-item level, and here further. But we might want to have it in color, for example, because otherwise it doesn't look so nice. So for example, here we can see how the assets are under the right family and again, where they are planned. But we can also see it not in quarters view, but in weeks view. So it's a little bit more readable and easy to see. Now, there are certain limitations to the timeline and Gantt chart view in Monday.com. I can't zoom out. I can only zoom out when it comes to the calendar itself, so I can see it in days. But if I would want to see everything in one screen, and it's a very wide timeline here, I can't. And this is a huge downside. I was actually already writing about it on Monday.com. So I think there are probably better tools for timelines. But again, if you just want to see something in a browser and scroll through it, you are able to do it. And it works pretty nice. And you can play with these different types of views and customize them and add them. And also, even if I remove our timeline here, I didn't remove any data. I just removed another viewing option for our board. One more I want to show you today is the file gallery. This is a view that is only reading images from our board. I uploaded here some Adobe stock images, so they are obviously not very relevant for any campaign, but I just wanted to show you how it looks like. These images on our board are in the sub-item level, and there is a column called Files. I don't even know where I updated them, but somewhere on this board. Yeah, here. In Digital Out of Home, I uploaded files just randomly, some video files here, low-res screener to 500 sets, and our file gallery is reading them in one view. This is extremely helpful when you are working on very sophisticated design campaigns and you want to have full visibility of how everything looks together. So maybe the creative director from the company will have this kind of visibility and they just want to open this, not see make list, but just see how all the assets are next to each other, because maybe due to some marketing messaging, some assets went a little bit too far off from the design because there is just too much text or something like this. So they will be able to see it, for example, using this view. And if you have thousands of assets on your board, it will be loading for some time. So be patient with this. Of course, it's a matter of your internet pace and like the server possibilities as well. Okay, great. So we covered the different views. And maybe now I can actually answer Sonia's question. So if you have, I'm gonna stop presenting for a second. So if you have a situation that you are, maybe your client is a little bit hesitant about using the system, and obviously you will have different people in the company. So you will have people who are very invested in the project and they want to see everything that is happening and they want to get all the notifications. But you might also have people there that are on the director's level and they just want to check it out from time to time. They definitely don't want to receive notifications on their emails. And you can do two things. First, if you are a project manager, you will not have admin options for that, but you can ask the admin on the account that you are working with if they can, first of all, instruct their team on how to not see all the notifications. And every member can do it. So you go to your profile, and in your profile on the left side, there is this notification tab. People who don't want to receive anything, they can just switch off all the notifications so that they can just check out what they want in their own time and terms. And when you are a new member, all your email notifications will be on, and it's very annoying. So whenever you're in a position that you're adding new members, tell them that this is where they can switch it off, because if they are using the system on a daily basis, they don't need email notifications. And email notifications will only be like, something has happened in Monday.com, go and check it out. So it's really not helpful, but it's just spamming us a lot. So you can switch it off completely. But the second thing is that there are different types of users on every account. There are members, there are guests, but there are also viewers. So if you have people who are, for example, some kind of top-level directors, and they just don't want to see everything, but they just want to view what's happening, their accounts can be changed to viewer. It's a free account, and it gives you the opportunity to sort of like browse through the account, but not change anything. So it's not for people who will be editing anything. And this is what I would advise for these kind of top-level directors who are usually too busy to like do anything in there, but they just want to see maybe again the charts with updates on the status of the campaign, or just some general numbers, or even check out the designs itself, just to see where the campaign is at. Did I answer your question, Sonia? I hope yes. Okay. So let me move back to my presentation. And so we have covered different kind of views, and on the views level and on the table, main table level, you can also use filters, and this is the most helpful thing when you are working on a really big project. And you can filter through one kind of condition. So for example, everything that has country France, but you can also create like mixed filters, so country and status and person who's working on it. So you can, for example, search for stuff that is for France with status working on it, created by Jean-Luc Picard, and you can save this filter into a view. This will be then another table view, so it will be also next to the main table here, or Gantt or chart. It will be just called table. You can rename it, of course, and you can, for example, call it France current, or however else you want to name it. Again, these views are visible for all the users on the board. These are not private, and you can't make them private, but this means that also someone else might delete it by accident. But again, this is just a filtered view. It's not deleting any other data from our main column, so you can recreate it easily. And this is what we covered. Okay, we are moving to the final countdown, so our basic automations. Automations are the key in project management right now, and it's not taking away human work, but it's just giving us an opportunity to save some time and actually think, because they are used for repetitive actions. The most important and the most basic automations on Monday.com are the two that I marked here. When status changes to something, notify someone. This one is used by everyone everywhere, and it can be used on every board in a few different ways. So it can be when status changes to delivered, inform project manager. When status changes to for approval, inform creative director. When status changes to approved, inform requester. So you can like use all sorts of status changes to inform different roles or different people. And you can, of course, make it more elaborate. So like when status changes to delivered, inform requester and project manager. And this is one of the things that is saving a lot of time. For on big clients' accounts, this action is taking place probably 1,000 times every month. So every time this automation is triggered, it means that it would have been an email previously. And of course, 1,000 emails takes a lot of time. So you can imagine how much time is saved just by this small automation. The second most popular automation is when date arrives, do something. So when date arrives, change status or notify someone or move an item somewhere. And it can be used for triggering reminders, for example, for producers. And when date arrives doesn't mean it has to be the date itself, but if you have a date column that is, for example, your deadline column, and you want to trigger a reminder 3 days before it, you can use this automation. So when 3 days before the date arrives, so 3 days before your deadline column date, and only if status is not something, notify someone. this is again another, I don't want to use it, but like game changer, because of course, this is one of the triggers that project manager has to otherwise manually compare the date and the status every time for every single asset, and we simply don't have enough time for that. So you can just have this automation like triggered automatically, and it doesn't have to be 3 days, it can be 7 days before, so that there will be a lot of time to do something. And the notification can be sent to your producer, your vendor, but also to project manager. So the producer would receive a different message and project manager different. For example, producer would receive a message saying, hey, your asset is not delivered and the delivery date is in 5 days. If you have a problem, inform project manager, or like just deliver your asset. And project manager might receive a message, this asset on this make list on this project is not delivered yet and delivery date is in 5 days. Check what's going on, because maybe the producer got sick and they just didn't inform anyone. So project manager has few days to react and save the day. And how do we create these automations? When we are on our board, on the upper right corner, there is this little robot head with automate button. And when you click on it, it opens the view with different automations templates that Monday.com suggests. And you can just scroll through it and see what's available there. And you can see that the columns that I told you about earlier are appearing here a lot. So all these bold words means either important columns or some kind of option that you can choose from in your automation. And we can just use this random template. So you can see here that it opened the building site, and I can choose which status column from our bot I want to use. And I can just choose, let's say, the status itself. And then it will read what kind of status boxes I have in this particular column. So I'm going to go with status changes to in approval. And then the item is supposed to be moved to one of the other groups. For our make list, it doesn't really make sense, but we're going to make it. So we're going to move any item from any other group to animations show when status changes to in approval. And we're going to do it right now. So our, let's say, briefing item, I'm changing to in approval. The asset was removed from here, it disappeared, and it's here. So this automation took place very fast. And of course, for this particular make list, it didn't really make sense, but it can be used when you are, for example, having some kind of request board and you want to move stuff that has changed the status to done, you want to move it to done, or stuff that was archived or stuff that was canceled, for example, so that it doesn't clutter your main production list. So this kind of automation can be used for this purpose, but you can, of course, go to all the other templates and see what else is there. And if you are already feeling confident with understanding it, you can add a customized automation, and it can be very elaborate. It doesn't have to just be 2 lines. It can be when status changes to something, and if certain column is empty and person is someone, then move item to the group and notify someone else. Obviously, this is very random, but I think you get the point. You can start thinking about your whole workflow and see what kind of changes could be done automatically. If you constantly repeat doing the same actions, maybe it can be automatized. And in the end, the notification, so the message to someone about it, will still be sent. So you're not missing this communication part, that someone will not be informed that something took place. And this is it, I believe. What do you guys think? Do you have any questions, or can I clarify anything from the presentation?
I feel you left us on a cliffhanger. We just need more, but unfortunately today we don't have time. But this is all super cool, Ada. I have one question, if I may. Of all the features that you showed us, so timelines, automations, etc., are they all included in Monday subscription plan, or are some of them more premium than others?
Everything I've shown you today is available for all the plans. And there are certain things that are available for higher plans, but I have been working for several accounts for corporations that have teams over 200-300 people on the account, and I have personally never reached a limitation, even though it was covering huge campaigns, and like we never came across the point when suddenly our subscription plan was like too many assets or too many something. So I think that if you come to this point, then congratulations. There are certain things that are maybe not available when it comes to automations, but it's on a very like elaborate level. All the basic stuff is available for basic account.
That's good news, I guess.
Yeah, it is. It is very good. And honestly, it also allows you to learn a lot on your own. Though I do not advise buying the account when you're working alone, because it just doesn't make sense unless you're some kind of pro that is handling 50 projects in the same time. Then it can help you. But if you are handling 1 or 2 projects in the same moment, then I think it would be a little bit a waste of money. Unless, of course, you just want to use this to learn yourself, because this is the best way to learn is working on live projects. It's very hard to learn when you don't have this basis of the project.
So setting yourself up with a kind of fake project and just trying how it works.
Yeah, but it really makes sense if it's real project, not fake, because that's the thing. When it's fake, you might be like, okay, I set it up and it works, but you don't know if it works because you are not able to confront it with other people, with the real needs of real projects, etc. So maybe use a project from the past that you have been working on.
Very good point. And if someone is really serious about learning more about Monday.com above just trying it out, what would you suggest?
Meet me. I love making these workshops. I'm very enthusiastic about the Monday.com and its possibilities. And I have been training people for years now. So if you would like to learn more, and if you would like to have like a customized training, then I invite you to contact me, and I'm sure we can come to some agreement.
Lovely, thank you. Are there any questions from the audience? Don't be shy.
I can see one of my lovely clients joined as well. Hello, Justyna. Lovely to see you.
Hi. I just came here like a few minutes ago, so
still lovely. I can report. Great. So thank you so much, guys. And yeah, if you will sleep over it and have some questions, I don't know, tomorrow or something like this, you can find me on Juno Slack or via Eva if you don't remember my complicated Polish name. And reach out to me on LinkedIn as well. I'm trying to be pretty active there also with articles about Monday.com functions. So feel free to jump on it and read it there as well.